This video contains spoilers for Death Stranding and the real world. Ooh. When asked about some of my favorite games of all time, it's not uncommon that I quickly bring up Death Stranding. No, wait. This gets interesting. I often refer to how realistic it is. No, seriously, it gets good. Sit down. Art is a funny thing. It's commonly believed that art imitates life and vice versa. In many instances, this is pretty obvious. A statue of a human looks human. But in many others, the comparison to real life is a bit more hidden. Starship Troopers and Helldivers, by extension, is fascinating in this regard. Starship Troopers, while a work of fiction, effectively captures the fears of the West of spreading communism in the form of the bugs. And video games are, of course, no different. The words based on a true story are not entirely uncommon. Some literal, some implied. And yet this very thing is precisely what I found myself falling in love with the Norman Reedus walking simulator, aka Death Stranding. While much can be said about Death Stranding's confusing story and repetitive gameplay, it beautifully captures the way in which we interact with the internet and social media. And this is demonstrated in the game mechanics in a visually evident way. It's truly impressive. So join me as I dig into the mechanics of Death Stranding and how they imitate social media using real-world examples. And thank you for taking part in the Death Stranding yourself right now. In Death Stranding, players assume the role of Sam Porter Bridges, a porter responsible for reconnecting a fractured world. Death Stranding is an incredibly abstract game, taking place in a world in which time no longer has meaning. In fact, it rains down, killing anything it touches by aging them rapidly. The world is also inhabited by these strange, black, humanoid creatures, ones that coalesce from the dark tar-like substance that comes with heavy rainfall. But human, these are not. As shown in the game, if a human dies and is not disposed of properly, this is cause for a cataclysmic explosion. Rapidly, the body decomposes beyond whatever these creatures are supposed to be and instead explodes into pure energy, seemingly a return to what we are all made of. And this establishes the world of Death Stranding as inherently unsettling. Humans living in a world that is no longer human. Familiar yet different, much like our social interactions online. Interacting with each other as best we can without making physical contact. Humans, after all, must stay connected to survive. We are not solitary creatures. The setting of the game itself further reinforces this online aspect, with advertisements being present. Before you can even become accustomed to the setting of the game, you are welcomed with advertisements for Monster Energy in the original and Norman Reedus' ride on AMC. But most notably and important for this analysis is the presence of likes within the game. With their inclusion, value is clearly placed upon the social aspect of the game, emphasized as a critical component. Yet, the game has no traditional multiplayer, an odd choice at first glance given the social nature of the game. However, while you never get to see other porters, you are advised that they are present and that you will be able to interact with them. And indeed, the structures and infrastructure which you and other players on the server make will be visible to all on that server. And by building these structures and developing the infrastructure of your server, you will amass likes and may give likes in return, which if you're feeling generous, it's free to touch the like button on this channel too. A social currency is thus established in which you will invest either intentionally or selfishly into the infrastructure of a server in exchange for likes. An economy of connection. And through some strategic structure placement and general investment to the infrastructure of some roadways, you can amass tens of thousands of likes in the game. Likes which ultimately do nothing. But much like in real life, just because likes don't do anything doesn't mean they're not without value. Much like in Death Stranding, barring extra effort on the part of the user, we will never meet in real life. Your very existence is only confirmed to me by a number that ticks up noting that the video has been viewed. In the same way that I only know that other players exist in Death Stranding by viewing their structures. But likes are an odd thing, aren't they? There is no intrinsic value to receiving a like. They are ego points, a sign that something that we've said or done resonates with people. And to be sure, watching likes grow on a video I've produced is an almost addictive experience. But this implied resonance that can be amassed on something that we put out online is a very powerful thing. Likes increase traffic, and with likes comes a sort of flow. The symbolism behind developing roadways in Death Stranding is not lost on me in the comparison, helping ease a literal flow of traffic. And together these likes, one at a time, can amass into something that has somewhat of a stream effect. And this increased flow creates a positive feedback loop, one feeding directly back into itself. And with enough views and likes, something that is only found online may find itself beginning to transcend out of the space, being reinforced so strongly that it bleeds into the real world. And in this way, likes, which have no intrinsic value, do eventually come to wield some form of power, as that which is seen to have the most likes is seen to be the best version of whatever it is we're watching. A sense of trust is thus placed in those that have the most likes, the most subscribers. They become a crucial aspect of maintaining social status in online communities. And this being a well-known fact will cause those who are seeking to grow their popularity online to find ways to increase their likes or subscribers, like me. Some will curate their content, posting only that which they believe that people will enjoy, like I'm doing right now, while others will lie or exaggerate, deceiving others to gain notoriety. To this day, when playing Dark Souls, reading a note of "try jumping" is always a nerve-wracking experience as to whether or not you should believe them. But likes do not differentiate between what is true and what is false, simply what is popular. And this can lead to real-world problems where two equally popular answers may present themselves in which one is true and one is false. And when looking for real-world examples of this occurring, there is no better place than to delve into the depths of Reddit. And that which is most pertinent is relevant to anybody who's tried to start a YouTube channel, being that of r/Newtubers. Newtubers, as the name suggests, is a subreddit dedicated to those trying to start their own YouTube channels. It is a subreddit dedicated to the free exchange of ideas, of support and critique, and friendly communication. And ultimately, it is a sad hellscape which smells of depression. Due to the sheer number of members, posts are made so frequently that truly only those which are popular are those which are seen. And broadly, these popular posts fall into two broad categories. Those which are full of distress and dismay that they feel their channel has failed and are seeking advice before they give up. And those who flaunt their success, who promise to hold all of the secrets to cracking the algorithm and finding success. And while I could make an entire video about how unnecessarily cruel we are to each other online, or how sometimes the best of intentions are entirely useless if falling on deaf ears, their words are ultimately more meaningless than the outcome of these posts themselves. These posts as a whole are not actually made to seek help, nor are they made to flaunt their success. It is done simply to draw attention to their channels, to help them grow. And so, as more members notice how well these posts do, they are inclined to make their own version, placing them along a road which has already formed. And the self-reinforcing behavior continues, the road becoming bigger and bigger as more users continue to post. And in Death Stranding, it's no different. The easiest way to amass the most likes is to place something along an already existing road. But the internet, and by extension social media, is an odd place, isn't it? At any moment we can change the roles in which we play. Currently I'm placing my own piece of media online, hoping to attract some attention. Yet, by the time you've watched this, I'll likely be consuming somebody else's content. And so we never truly interact with each other. We interact with the echoes of one another. And we may choose to try to interact with each other. Much like Sam, I could say, "Hello!" And one of you may be so inclined to say, "Hey" back in the comments. But we may also be silent observers, ignoring something we've seen entirely, or simply consuming it and leaving, no words spoken. But in Death Stranding, the most efficient means for us to receive an interaction much in the real world is to place something which we believe to be useful or interesting, one that can form a connection. But much in the way that Newtubers altered the subreddit's means of amassing the most likes by self-promoting, you can do the same in Death Stranding. A zip line or ladder you've placed may become a critical piece of infrastructure along a path between two bases. And as you play in real time, you will notice other players place their structures to accommodate things that you've placed which have become useful. The landscape is ever evolving. And most subtle and fascinating of all to anyone who's played Death Stranding is actually the shaping of the landscape itself. If you were to do multiple playthroughs of Death Stranding, you'd notice the paths you take between bases can be significantly altered. If you're seeking a true challenge, play Death Stranding while offline. It is a much more difficult experience than if you play while connected. The literal footprints that you and other players leave will flatten the terrain, allowing for the passing of vehicles, quickly forming links between bases that will be significantly different on each playthrough. And certainly when trying to grow a social media account, posting with the intent of never interacting with anyone else is a far more difficult way of growing a channel. And the more you place your structures around an already established route in Death Stranding, the more concretely you will contribute to a path in the game. Much like you will see greater success by posting a video on an already trending topic on YouTube than trying to blaze your own path. So what happens when an already optimal route exists? How could it be possible that other paths would start? Again, if we look to real life, we can see examples and pretty prominent figures. If I were to ask you what Logan Paul and Mr. Beast have in common, there are actually a surprising amount of answers despite them being extremely different people. At its core, both have been integral to YouTube as a platform. Their content has been so broad and so varied that they themselves are essentially a niche and path of their own. And to be certain, these aren't the only ones. MatPat, PewDiePie, Markiplier, all names which have altered what it means in our minds to be a YouTuber. And thus it's no surprise that others have chose to make so many videos about their content and them as people that it largely overshadows their own content itself, placing more structures along an already existing path, to use Death Stranding's logic. But almost as popular as moving along with the stream on YouTube, one could instead choose to forge a different path, a path of controversy. And at the time of recording in the year of our Lord 2024, controversy seems to be an ever-present thing in social media. We can hardly go a week without some large controversy having come up. Both Logan Paul and Mr. Beast, no strangers to it at this point. And this is not contributing to the path itself, but instead a form of off-ramp. One that, if it can attract enough likes, will divert the main path and actually, if effective enough, may cancel it altogether. Yet there is a third way to capture a significant amount of likes on social media, which is also captured within Death Stranding. And that, of course, being meme culture and shitposting. And for anyone that's played Death Stranding, it's pretty clear that it has a fascination with bodily fluids. Your shower water, urine, feces, and even your blood are effective weapons against the monsters of the game. And while there is some interesting symbology there of inserting a human element into a foreign world, I'd instead like to focus on a unique action that Sam can do in-game.
Sweet fucking relief.
Now, taking a piss in the game is actually a bit of an odd mechanic to include, and not only because I wasn't expecting to allow Norman Reedus to pee on command. It's odd because there appears to be no true reason to do so. In fact, you're wasting a valuable resource which you can use to craft grenades. All that happens when you take an extended pee is that a mushroom spawns, one that can be liked. And this, of course, seems entirely useless at first glance. In fact, it is if you're playing alone. But with enough likes, the mushroom begins to grow and grow into this weird parasite nest filled with these disgusting things that you can eat to restore health. And this is a fundamentally important structure in the game for an amateur player. These grubs are the only way to regenerate your blood without resting at a base, making them a valuable resource. And these are so fundamentally important within the game that it's not uncommon that the pathways placed will actually be altered to incorporate them along the routes, fundamentally shifting the infrastructure of a map just by taking a piss. A visually powerful demonstration of the efficacy of piss posting. I mean, shit posting. Death Stranding is a fascinating game in many ways, but most of all in the way that it allows us to play through our social interactions online. In a post-pandemic world, we have largely become accustomed to being apart from one another, from each other, from school, from work. And yet, life goes on. We've found a way to continue to integrate with one another by being alone together, connected yet apart, interacting with the echoes of one another online. And this is a good thing. It speaks to humanity's resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity. We cannot survive alone. And the way in which we navigate our world now may be different than it was 10 years ago, but will be different yet again a decade from now. And so we have a choice to make, much like Sam Porter Bridges does. Do we tread the path of those who walked before us? Do we blaze our own trail? Or do we simply observe and wait to see what happens? And ultimately, the beauty of Death Stranding was that there is no wrong path, simply the path we chose. There's only one thing to do, to keep on keeping on.